Good afternoon. Welcome to this Butch Alterman Memorial Webinar presented by the Brain Injury Association of America. Today's webinar is on taking the first step, no matter how small. Before we begin, please note that all attendees are muted. If you have a question, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. Questions will be spread to the speaker at the end of the presentation. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Nick Prefontaine. Nick is a three-time best-selling author and was named a top motivational speaker of 2022 in Yahoo Finance. He's the founder and CEO of Common Goal and has been featured in Brains, Media, Sway, and Authority magazine. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Laura. And really, you've been terrific in getting this set up. And thank you to the entire team at BIAA for giving me the opportunity to share my message today. And I'm really happy that we are able to get this scheduled. And getting ready for this and getting prepared for it, I wanted to take a look at past Butch Alterman Memorial webinars that have been done. And in looking at those, I found that I can really see that I'm in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. So I'm looking forward to this today. When I had to learn how to walk again at the age of 14, I had no idea that the first step I took was not with my feet, but with my mind. Making the decision to take one step was my first step. I had no memory or recollection of how I used to do things. Things like taking a shower had been erased from my memory, and I literally had to be taught that the water came before the soap. When learning how to walk again, my first steps wouldn't come until at least a month after my accident. The most important thing here, however, was that I did something. I took my first step without knowing it was my most important. On a February afternoon, my friends and I had just got to one of our most exciting days of the week, ski club. On our first run, the chairlift went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. There wasn't even a moment of thinking, should I do it? Or maybe I shouldn't. I knew that was what I was doing. In my mind, it was a foregone conclusion. I was already thinking about what we would do after I landed that huge trick. Maybe grab a burger and fries in the lodge, or we could head over to the other chairlift for some runs on those trails. I was just happy to be there finally. I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. Going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember. Due to the severity of my injuries, they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital. They couldn't because it was too windy, so they had to send in an ambulance. Out of the 6 paramedics, there was only one who could intubate right on the spot, and I needed that to be able to breathe. He was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. There are still several things that I can't explain because of my accident, and now I know one of them is the reason why I'm here with you today. No matter the severity of your crisis, your decision to take action is your first step. Something else I learned was that my goggles were the only protection that my head had. They told me that with each subsequent hit after the initial impact, my goggles mysteriously moved to cushion each blow as I rolled down the mountain. I wore some pretty big goggles with a lot of padding. I never would have fathomed that I would need them to brace my fall. The school had to get in touch with my parents and have them meet me at the hospital. All they knew was that I'd been in an accident. My dad was the one that they were able to reach first. When he called my mom, he wasn't able to get her live, so he had to leave her a message. As soon as he hung up, he realized that the message might panic her, so he called back and deleted it. When they both got to the hospital, they were totally shocked to see how rough of a shape I was in. My head and shoulder, where I made the initial impact, were bruised beyond comprehension. The doctors had to drill a hole for a shunt to be inserted inside my brain to help relieve the pressure. At this point, I was out for the count, but I can only imagine what it must have looked like to see a doctor standing over me, foot in my chest, while he was drilling the hole into my head. After that point, I was resting in a partially induced coma in the intensive care unit, unable to communicate with anyone. Each time the doctors would come into my room to share progress updates with my parents would usher them out of the room. They knew that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. Especially in the early stages, these updates from the doctors were not very positive. They had to give them the worst case scenario. Once out of the room, the doctors told my parents that I probably wouldn't be able to walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again. Even if I was able to come out of the coma, there was a good chance that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. They didn't accept this, like so many patients do, as a death sentence. They took the information, thanked the doctors, and allowed me to treat it like any other situation. This was no different than any other challenge that I had faced up to this point in my life. I really didn't see the difference. As soon as I was aware of my surroundings and the work that was left in front of me, I treated it like any other situation. I got up, did the best that I could, and I kept getting better every day. This support was instrumental in laying the foundation for the rest of my recovery. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was starting to use the very framework that would help me to overcome and achieve any obstacle throughout the rest of my life. We're so fortunate at Common Goal to be able to share this with the rest of the world. That is the STEP system. The STEP system is what we created and I unknowingly used. Let's start with the S, which stands for support. Support. Make sure that you have the support of your family and friends. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. It might sound overly simplistic, but this very act of getting everyone aboard at the start can save you hours and hours of actual time, worry, and frustration in the future. You're going to want to have an advocate. There has to be someone in your life that you can rely on to be your advocate. For me, it was my parents, given that I was 14 years old. It doesn't matter how old you are, and that advocate doesn't have to be your parents. It can be a close friend or neighbor that you share everything with. It can be your partner, husband, wife, or spouse. It's different for everyone, just like everyone is different. Reach out and share what's happening in your life. By reaching out and sharing the intimate details of what you're going through, you will open the doors to community support. Your advocate can help organize all of your doctors and therapists with a common goal. Schedule weekly meetings to keep everyone pulling in the same direction. It's accountability. If they know they're going to be meeting with you on Fridays, then they're going to want to accomplish what they said they were going to. This will fast forward the doctors and the therapist plan for you. To give you an idea, our common goal was for me to run out of the hospital. This is where having a team becomes so important. Once you have that support, and it can be 1 or 10, it doesn't matter, make sure that you always have someone with you. This helps so much because without it, your mind has a possibility to play tricks on you and be negative. You could have your advocate in place and your team lined up, but if you're not willing to receive the support, it'll all be for nothing. It's okay to receive help at different points in your life. In fact, we all help one another, and that's one of the beauties of being alive. The times that you feel that you don't need the support are often the times that you need it the most. Your advocate can get help from the rest of your team to place positive affirmations around you. Positive affirmations around your room always supports growth. When I was in the hospital, my parents had affirmations all over my room. Picture it. The only time that I wasn't in therapy or meeting with my doctors, I was in my room. At least in the early stages, it wasn't like I could get up and walk out of my room. They made the decision for me that I was going to have a positive mindset before I could make for myself. This is something that your advocate can do for you early on in the process. Even if you didn't have a supportive family growing up, you can still build a foundation from any point in your life. There was a short period when I came out of my coma in the ICU. I had my eyes open. I know because I've seen videos of myself there. I've even gone back and visited the ICU since. Although I can't consciously remember being there, everything looks so familiar. Everything from the layout of the floor in the rooms right down to the faces of the doctors and nurses. I feel like I know them and I've been there before, but I just can't seem to put my finger on it. After a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. Initially, I resided on the third floor, which was reserved for the most critical of cases. I hardly have any memory of being on the third floor, and that's because they were in the process of taking me off of all the drugs and medication from a partially induced coma. I still had a long road to go. The most that I could do was sit up in bed, supported by 3 nurses for only 8 minutes at a time. After that, I was sweating profusely like I had just ran a marathon. Although these nurses probably didn't appreciate me sweating all over them in these 8 minutes, this was one of my first steps. I didn't cling to my suffering. I chose not to look at the end result, which was the medically driven, inevitable outcome that could have catapulted me into overwhelm. By that, I mean an overwhelm of machines, doctors, what ifs, whens, and catastrophic thinking. I had lost all control of the situation in front of me. Much like we can't control the hand that we're dealt. We can't control getting into an accident, the death of a loved one, being physically or sexually abused as a kid, but we can control what our next steps are going to be. The times that you don't take any steps is when you get stuck. You become paralyzed. Instead, I chose to focus on the present moment in front of me and took one step at a time. I kept taking the next step and the next, and less than 60 days later, I ran out of the hospital. Not a big deal, but since then I've ran 2 half marathons, a 10-mile race, and a 10K where I shaved 30 seconds off my per mile time. The next letter in the step system is T, and that stands for trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. This also starts with trusting yourself. Trust that you have this desire or calling inside of you for a reason. Follow it. There are a few key elements of trust that I'd like to highlight. None more important than having blind faith. You have to take everyone at their word. When I was learning how to walk, talk, and eat again, I took everyone at their word. Was really at a point where I could question, after they asked me to do something, I don't really think we should do it that way. I might do it another way. Or, I don't know about that. I had to have blind faith. Then I started to become addicted to the progress that I was making, and I asked for more. What else can I do that will fast forward me toward our common goal? Secondly, trust means being in integrity. You have to do what you say and say what you'll do. No exceptions. This isn't all sunshine and rainbows. This is going to be work, and it'll be worth it once you make it through to the other side. I didn't have a word for this during my recovery, but this was very important. If I agreed to anything that they asked me to do, I followed it through to completion. If I said I was going to do extra exercises, I did them. You need to let go of all expectations. Focusing on minute by minute, hour by hour, and day by day helps eliminate overwhelm and allows you to implement the STEP system. After I first got into the accident, my parents asked, when can you go home? Instead, they reframed this and thought in terms of hours, days, and weeks, and the outcome became easier to see. Focus on what's in front of you. I did the work without an expectation of an immediate result. Step. I was consistent in how I showed up. Step. I stayed in the present moment and celebrated daily achievements, no matter how small. Step. By doing something every day towards my recovery, I was building an unstoppable momentum. There are so many people who don't have the tools or strategies to move beyond their present circumstance. Whether that is a life challenge, crisis, or trauma, they don't believe that by simply taking their first step, they can move beyond it. Based on my personal experience of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, I can tell you that once you take your first step, it allows your next step to become possible. Part of what helped me run out of the hospital was the support that I received from my family. When I first got into the accident, my parents had a very specific goal in mind, and that was for me to make a full recovery. While I was in the coma, they had already set the wheels in motion for the rest of my recovery. Every day, I always had someone with me. My mom would be with me during the day, going to every therapy and doctor's appointment with me. To help support her, my grandparents, Nan and Gramp, or her parents would also come in and spend several days, most days during the week with us. And I can remember it was early on in my recovery. So I was still in a wheelchair at this point, and I still really wasn't laughing or smiling or really being my old self. And my grandfather thought he would bring me in a gift to help me laugh, to help me lighten up, to smile, and to be my old self. Now, it's something that we all point to that really aided me in my recovery.
No.
That gift was a fart machine. As soon as he gave it to me, I put it to work. One of the things that Nan and Grandpa and I would always love to do is go to lunch together. It was just our thing. It was what we would do together. It was our special thing, something I always look forward to. My mom, who knows at this point what she was doing, but we would always, it was just our thing. We'd go down to the cafeteria. Now, to get to the cafeteria was in the basement. And as I mentioned, I was still in a wheelchair at the time. And my grandmother was pushing my wheelchair. Now, to get to the cafeteria, you had to take the elevator all the way down to the basement. And then you had to go down this long hallway. I can picture it now. My grandmother's pushed in the wheelchair, and my grandfather and I thought it'd be a great idea to stash the fart machine right in the wheelchair. We waited until we passed by a doctor. Oh, you should have seen their faces. They thought it was my grandmother. And the fart machine, as you can imagine, was a hit when we got back upstairs to the second floor unit. Picture it. We're all in a hospital, albeit a children's rehabilitation hospital, and it really caused quite the commotion, if you will, and made everyone laugh and lighten up. There was this boy who I became friends with named Brian. Now, Brian was 7 years younger than me, and so I was 14 at the time. He was 7. Now, my sister always points to this, still to this day, that it always used to frustrate me to no end that Brian would always beat me at video games every single time. That's not really the reason why I was frustrated. The reason why I was frustrated wasn't because he was 7 years younger than me. It was that Brian had lost the use of his hands and his arms because of a birth defect. So everything that you and I would do with our hands and our arms, Brian would do with his feet. So every time he was beating me in video games, he was beating me with his feet. So on this day that Gramp got me the fart machine, Brian had beat me. After Brian beat me yet again, his team of doctors and therapists came over to discuss what his next steps and his treatment plan were going to be. Thought I'd really get him back because he beat me again. So as they were wheeling away, I snuck the fart machine right in his wheelchair. Now I waited until he got 20 feet away discussing serious matters. You should have seen Brian's reaction. Nick, what'd you do? Where'd you put it? I swear I'm going to get you for this. I swear. And that's something that we have fun with and laughed about throughout the rest of those next couple weeks together. And it really brought laughter and light and levity to an unfortunate situation. We're all in a children's rehabilitation hospital, so it really gave everyone a chance to laugh. At night, my dad would come in and spend nights with me. Because at this time he was traveling for work and wasn't able to be there every single night, I would have my grandfather or one of my uncles come and spend the night with me. I chuckle just thinking of the memory of this. So I was still at this point not able to talk. I was still within a week of being cleared to walk. So whenever anyone would stay with me, whether it was my dad or my grandfather, who I call Bub, and I can't resist this story. So the reason I call him Bub, I was the first grandchild to be born, and they asked him, Bob, what do you want the grandkids to call you? And he said, Bob. Well, as a baby, I wasn't really able to say Bob, so what came out was Bub. And I still call him Bub to this day. So after Bub and I spent a fun night together, and they lived an hour and 20 minutes north up in Maine. So picture it, he had to work all day at his company, and then he drove down south to Boston, an hour and 20 minutes away. And we had a great night, and I had to get up during the middle of the night. And the reason why I woke up was Bub snoring. Bub snoring is what woke me up. And I leaned over my bed, and I just couldn't get his attention because I didn't have a voice at that time. It was a whisper at most. So I leaned over and I said, Bub, Bub, Bub. Nothing. He didn't wake up. snoring away. And I looked around my bed and thought of what else I could do. So I picked up a pillow and I leaned over and I threw it at him. Nick, you okay? What's wrong? What happened? Do you need me to get someone? I said, no, bub, I'm fine, but I can't sleep. You're snoring. Another night that either Bob or one of my other uncles couldn't be there, my Uncle T came down and spent the night with me. So my Uncle T and I both we share a love for cars. We're car enthusiasts. So when I got in my accident, he actually had a pickup truck and he had dual custom cherry bomb Vortex cherry bomb exhaust installed on the truck. And I absolutely love this thing, the sound of it. So he got there, and after everyone went home, I pleaded with him to take me outside. Take me outside to the back parking lot so I can hear. That's where they kept the cars. So you go one way, you go down to the basement, go to the cafeteria, you go the other way, it was a parking lot. So now, for those of you that have been in a hospital or a rehab hospital, it's not like prison, but you're not really supposed to leave whenever you want. So I say this because after everyone left and we made sure we waited enough time for everyone to leave, Uncle T took me down to the basement. He wheeled me in the wheelchair out to the parking lot and he started up his truck and oh my gosh, so much joy. I absolutely loved it. And one of the memories that really sticks out to me, and it's one of those things that it really sticks out to me. So when he came down to visit me, I still wasn't clear to walk. So people don't talk about this and you don't think about this, but how is someone that can't walk, how are they going to shower? So how I would shower every day was they had to wheel me on, I call it almost a flatbed truck. That's what I think of in my mind, just a big flat tray kind of thing. And I remember that Uncle T picked me up off the wheelchair and placed me on this flat table kind of thing and covered me with a towel. I can remember, and the reason why I probably remember it is because he made everything fun and he continues to make everything fun to this day. So I just remember it so well that we were racing around and going faster up the hallway, and I was telling him faster, and I just remember the lights whizzing by me. That's one of the memories that really sticks out for me. So this was my support in action, and it was one of the key ingredients for me not only making a full recovery, but running out of the hospital. When I was in the hospital, I saw that there were so many kids that didn't have the support that I had. They didn't have an advocate with them at all times, so they could easily fall into being a victim of circumstance. Without a consistent diet, a positive reinforcement in our lives, our minds can easily fall into playing the victim. It's human nature. I would start my day by having to be taught by my occupational therapist to have to shower again. Then I would have breakfast and get dressed. Well, not in that order. Get dressed first, and then I would have breakfast. Then it was time to start my first therapy sessions of the day. I would have physical, occupational, and speech therapy. After which you broke for lunch. It was at one of these lunches in my hospital room when a moment of doubt crept in. I can remember being in a wheelchair at the time and just looking over my situation. And I just couldn't figure it out. I can remember turning to my mom and asking, am I ever going to be able to walk again? She didn't even hesitate. Of course you are. That's what we're doing here, so you can get everything back and we go home. Step. This allowed me to keep moving forward. After lunch, it was back to the salt mines. Again, physical, occupational, and speech therapy. I had double sessions of therapy, 5 days a week. At the time, I wasn't aware that I was utilizing the STEP system to recover from my snowboarding accident. I was only 14 years old at the time, and I still had so much left to learn. I still feel that way to this day, and that's part of the reason why I keep learning, growing, and getting better every day. After running out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. Looking back at this, it's a little surreal that only 18 months later, I got my start in real estate, door knocking pre-foreclosure doors, or homeowners that have received the notice of default letter from the bank, meaning that they have missed a few payments, or let's be candid, it was back in 2006, before the crash, they missed like 10 or even more, 12 payments, and the bank still hadn't foreclosed on the home. So my job was to set up meetings for an investor to meet with them the following week to explore potentially buying their house. And looking back at this, I can see that it was a part of my recovery. Going door to door, helping people out of their unfortunate situation. Next, we're going to be diving into E of the STEP system, which stands for energy. Energy is one of my favorites to talk about, and that's because it is something that I still focus on to this day. Energy, maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. Obviously, within reason here. That first night in the hospital after my accident cost $250,000. If it wasn't for modern medicine, I wouldn't be here today. However, there is a use, time, and place for everything. A month after my accident, when I came out of the ICU, was a time that we needed to allow the body to heal itself. You can invest in and commit to your energy with these types of treatments. Meditation, Qigong, mental health and wellness, Reiki, massage therapy, acupuncture, or other natural treatments, exercise, and recovery. My parents had someone come in and perform Reiki on me while I was in the coma. They knew of the body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. Medication has the potential to get in the way of that. So we had to be careful of this. Even after running out of the hospital, it wasn't like I was done getting all of the chemicals and toxins that were pumped into me to help keep me alive. I started 3 years after running out of the hospital, I started to see a naturopathic doctor to rid my body of all the toxins. Now, he would do everything based upon your blood type. So you would get all these different supplements, and I had to take them with every meal. Along with, most importantly, getting all of these kinds of treatments and natural therapies to rid my body of all of these toxins. And I would get them every 2 weeks. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I would drive. It was an hour and 20 minutes away from my house. And I would drive there and get all of these different kinds of treatments. And just to name a few, foot bath, colonic, acupuncture, hyperbaric chamber, phangotherapy, infrared sauna, and that's just off the top of my head to name a few. That's certainly not all of them, but I would do that every 2 to 3 weeks, and I did that. I continued to do that for 3 years, and I can remember being in one of the doctor's office from the institute. And when you first get in there and you first start seeing them, you have an initial evaluation. They measure all your levels. It's almost like a physical, but a little more in depth. They measure all your levels and where you're at, so they have a baseline. So I can remember 3 years later sitting in one of the doctor's office and him looking at my chart, looking over all my results, and I remember him saying, "Nick, you've done such a great job with sticking with the program, sticking with all the supplements, getting the treatments, and sticking with the diet, what you had to do based on your blood type. You're welcome," he said to me, "you're welcome to keep coming here for almost like maintenance. And I think it's definitely a good course of action for you to do that. However, we've kind of done what we can, so to speak. And there's not really much left we can do for you." So right around that time, I was introduced in March of 2009 to my next teacher, Dr. Ming Wu. Now, I met him at a business dinner. It was actually for my dad. I was with my dad at the time. And I met him at that dinner, and he worked on me, right? He's a Tui Na practitioner and a Tai Chi and Qigong master. His energy is immense. It's insane. So he worked on me right at that table, at that dinner in March of 2009 when I first met him. And instantly I was hooked. So I started seeing him instead of going to the naturopathic doctor every 2 to 3 weeks. I started seeing him with that same rhythm and cadence every 2 to 4 to now I see him still to this day every 5 weeks. And Ming was the one who taught me how to meditate. So in addition to seeing him monthly still, I'm actually seeing him tomorrow, coincidentally to being asked to do this webinar. I'm seeing him tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that. And whenever I see him, I get Tui Na followed by cupping. And really, that's so important to mention because, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to talk about energy, because I think, especially for brain injury survivors, it's such an important thing to focus on your energy. Now, focusing on your energy is something that is within your complete control. Just like the final letter in the step system, P for persistence. Persistence. Once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. By continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. I can remember it was back in 2012 when I actually developed a voice issue. I remember looking everywhere for answers and I just couldn't figure it out. No one could give me an answer. Everyone said I was fine. And I remember I finally wound up in a voice specialist office. Prior to that, I'd actually went to speech therapy on my own, and I figured I had to learn how to talk again once. Why couldn't I do it again? This was a local speech therapist. So I started seeing them weekly, and it was once a week at first. Then it was twice a week. By the end of April 2013, I was seeing them 3 to 4 times a week. And the exercises helped, and they gave me strategies for dealing with the issue that I was having with my voice, but nothing they ever did was really fixing it. And I could have stopped here and given up. However, this practice of one step at a time is what I know to be the solution to all of life's problems. I remember in May of 2013, I wound up at their office, the local speech therapist. And them saying to me that we have tried everything that we can think of, given you every technique, every tactic, every strategy. And at this point, the only thing that we can recommend is that you go and see a voice specialist in Boston. I guess there are only 35 of these specialists in the whole country, and one of them was right in Boston, a 2-hour drive away. I finally gave in and scheduled an appointment with him. Dr. Philip Song. No, I'm not making that up. The voice specialist name is Dr. Song. I always thought that was funny. My appointment with him was for the beginning of August 2013. For the past year, I had built up in my head what a big deal it was to go to Boston. Such a big deal. I built this up in my head. I can remember I was so worked up over this. And when I finally had an appointment with him in August 2013, Dr. Song walked in the room, heard me speak, and right away nonchalantly goes, "Oh, that? Yeah, we deal with that all the time. Go see the front desk and schedule a Botox injection in a couple weeks." Shocked. I was sold. Hook, line, and sinker. I got scheduled, and for the next 7 years, I received Botox injections. For the past year, I have built up in my head what a big deal this was, the Botox injections, and sat down. Dr. Song said, "Tilt your head back, and as you breathe in, I should feel a pinch." A very little pinch, and 3 seconds later, Dr. Song said, "Also, see the front desk and schedule a appointment with one of our voice therapists in a couple weeks." I walked out of there in absolute awe. Here I had built this up in my head as major surgery for the past year, and all it was a little pinch. Are you kidding me? Working with Dr. Song's team in conjunction with the Botox allowed me to retrain my throat muscles back to how they were before I developed any issues. You see, what I was doing, it was screaming. So I was screaming my scripts at the top of my lungs because I heard somewhere that if you read your scripts and you chant your scripts, I was a realtor at the time. So I heard somewhere if you chant your scripts before you get on the phone, that's going to increase your levels of energy, and you're going to be able to convey that more on the phone. So I heard this and I was like, oh no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to scream through my scripts. Not only will this get my energy up, but it will really reinforce the scripts, so I know them in my bones. I thought I had found the secret to closing more deals as a realtor. That's what caused this whole voice issue. And after 7 months of doing this to my voice, I can remember being out to dinner, just my mom and I, and maybe someone had said something to me prior, but I just wasn't ready to hear it. She noticed that my voice sounded different. I remember brushing it off because I didn't want to accept it. This is the first step that I missed taking. So then I finally, if you fast forward a little bit, finally was able to get this worked out of my system. And I wound up for the last time in February of 2020, February 13th of 2020, and I got my last Botox injection. So that has proven that it's worked its way out of my system. Now, all throughout my life, really since my accident, I've been drawn to people that are in the midst of their own trauma or challenge. The common goal, always to help them get through to the other side and to be able to thrive with the rest of their lives. And that is where our company, Common Goal, was born from. What if all life was a series of next steps? How much more effortless and stress-free would life be if all you had to think about every day was just taking your next step? There is so much overwhelm in the world. This crisis fatigue can cause feelings of exhaustion, anger, despondency, fear, and even send us into analysis paralysis, preventing us from moving forward and into a life beyond our wildest dreams. The beauty is that you don't need me, or for that matter, anyone at Common Goal, to utilize this life-saving system. Just go to nickprefontaine.com/step to download the entire STEP system for free today. Think about where you are stuck, challenged, or in crisis, and how you can take action today with one step. Whatever it is that you're going through, what's the first step that you can do to change it? And the next? And the next? You get the idea. Once you take your first step, there will always be a next step. Thank you. Now, I wanted to make sure that we left plenty of time for question and answer, because that's what I think I'm more excited about than being able to share my story, is being able to help people right now that are all tuned in. So definitely open it up a little, Laura, if you want to help me and open it up with some Q&A. And I actually see there's one that's in the Q&A from Paige. Let's see here. Okay, I can actually read this. Hi, Nick. I'd like to say that similarly, standard medicine saved my life after blood clots in my lung caused oxygen deprivation brain injury at age 32. And then additional functional medicine options really promoted thriving from a holistic perspective. I think it's so important, Paige, that that you be open to this, that you be open to not one or the other. So not only traditional medicine and medication, that, or 100% holistically and natural, like, oh no, I don't do doctors and medication. I really think you have to marry the two. You have to do both. And that's actually one of the reasons that Dr. Song said to me at the last appointment that I saw him at, my voice doctor. That's what I call him Voice Wizard, I guess, if you will. I can remember in that appointment him saying to me that I was one of the only people that was, every time I came back for a Botox treatment, my voice was better, was a little better and a little better and a little better every time I came back. And he credited that to the reason that you're talking about here, Paige, is that you have to do both. Every bit in between those Botox treatments, I was always getting Tuina, getting craniosacral therapy, getting acupuncture, doing all these natural treatments on my own. And that was the reason that I was able to get this voice issue out of my system. And I think it's a marrying of both of them, both the natural holistic and the modern medicine. I think you need to do both of them.
Yeah, Nick, I just wanted to tell people to please type your questions in using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. I see we have another one now. Nick, someone else just sent another one in.
Very awesome. Let's see here. Well, we don't know who it is, but it's someone important. What do you suggest for those who are older, 50s plus, who acquire brain injury, who have limited funds and energy? I think, thank you for the question. I really think it's all about the fact that I hear this all the time, and that's, oh no, lucky for you, you have a supportive family. And lucky for you that you have people that were there for you. Well, it doesn't, people they misconstrue support and family as the same thing. They're not. So I think if you're going through anything, be it any age, but in this case, 50s or older, there's always going to be, I just keep going back to the step system. So there's always going to be someone that's coming around and asking if you need anything, asking if you need help. What I found and what we found is that if you're locked into this box of, oh no, it can only be family that can help me, you might be blind to that. But your support is always going to be there. You just have to be open to receiving it from other places. And like I said, the step system, I keep going back to that. So once you have that support lined up, you can trust that once you take your first step, your next step's always going to be available. And the three things in there within trust, blind faith, you're doing everything in integrity, and then you let go of expectations. And then as long as you've done that in that order, support, trust, then you can focus on your energy. And then as long as you're doing that to take care of your energy and to be operating at the best, so you're able to not only help yourself, but help others that are going through similar things, you can move on to persistence. And persistence, once you take your first step, just keep taking your next step every day. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. How do you deal frustration? From what could do pre-accident? That's a great question, because even everyone can get caught in the what if game and thinking about, well, what if I did this different? Maybe the accident wouldn't have happened. Or if I only did this one thing, but you can't do that. You only, that's not productive. For yourself, mentally and energetically, you can't do that. You'll drive yourself crazy and drag yourself down. All you can do is focus on what's in front of you and how you can get better every day. Because I've even gone through that. I've been like, well, what if this? Well, I could have done this before my accident. I can't do it anymore. But you can't do that. You can only focus on getting better in some small way today. So I hope that helps. And I also hope that you're downloading the entire step system. I really think that'll help you and help you take your first step. Work with a 38-year-old man who has an anoxic brain injury when he was 18. He has a very supportive family and has had natural therapies. That's awesome. I'm wondering if there's anything. I'm wondering what else I can do to help him. I said functional medicine practitioner. Still suffers deeply. Mentioned Reiki. Yeah, what I do, Tiffany, what I do here, and like I said, I still do it. I'm going to see Ming tomorrow, and that's Tui Na. So if you've never heard of that, look it up. Because I think that's something that he would be able to benefit from greatly. Tui Na, I still get that for almost to keep my energy in tune, so I'm able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. I still get it once every 5 weeks, along with craniosacral once every 5 weeks. So I think those are definitely things that you should tell him about, that he can start doing as well, because it's only going to help. Noah, how do you structure your day to know that you have enough mental and physical energy to do everything that you need to do? Oh, great question. I love talking about this. So I start my day. I have a dog, so I let her out, of course, but I start my day by meditating and doing Qigong for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And I haven't, Ming was the one who taught me how to do this back in 2009 for the first time. So I literally started out with 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 20 minutes. So now altogether, I meditate for 20 to 30 minutes, and then I do Qigong for another 10 or 15 minutes. Altogether, it's 30 to 45 minutes. Then after that, I usually read and write and reflect and journal and have coffee or tea. And Noah, that helps me start my day in the right place and be centered, so I can really handle anything that comes at me. And I 100% recommend that for anyone else, brain injury or not. And I know we're going over here, Laura. I just want to make sure I'm answering all these. Is there a resource list? Brain injury therapists. What training do you look for? No. What I'm talking about is additional things, anonymous attendee, additional things that I've done. Tui Na is like a form of massage, and then craniosacral is a massage, and then I see a naturopath on my own, but those are all things that those aren't like approved brain injury therapies or therapists, if that is.
Hey, great. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Looks like that's the end of the questions.
I think we got to them all. We fit them all in.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing your story and your time with us and giving us some good advice. And thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're very welcome, Laura. And it was awesome to be able to share my story and my message and see if I can help some people along the way. So I'm happy to do it.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And like I said, we're recording this. We'll have it on our website. So you can hear it again, everyone. So, and have your friends hear it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a great day.
Good day.
Thank you again,
Thanks.
Laura.